Okay. Now, today we're going to look at chapter 11, um, um, which is really divided into like three little sections. But would someone read verses 1 to 9? Another person verses 10 to 26, and a third person 27 to the end, please.
I'll do the first. Oh,
That's okay. All right, Susan, you're going to do 1 to 9.
okay.
Bryce, you want to do 10? Did I see your hand? 10 to 26?
That's fine.
Okay. And then who wants to do 27 to the end? Linda. Good. All right. Okay. Thank you. You can begin, Susan.
Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and they settled there. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make names for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered all over the face of the whole earth." But the Lord came down to the city and the tower the people were building. The Lord said, "If one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they do not understand each other." So the Lord scattered them from all over the earth, and from there, all over the earth, they stopped building the city. That is why it is called Babel, because the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there, the Lord scattered them all over the face of the earth.
Thank you. Bryce?
I'm 11 to what, Father?
You are verse 10 to 26.
10 to 26. Okay. These are the family records of Shem. Shem lived to 100 years and fathered Ashkenazi 2 years after the flood. And after he fathered Ashkenazi, Shem lived 500 years and fathered other sons and daughters. Ashkenazi lived 35 years and fathered Shalmah. After he had fathered Shalmah, Ashkenazi lived 403 years and fathered other sons and daughters. Shalmah lived 30 years and fathered Eblah. And after he fathered Eblah, Shalmah lived 430 years and fathered other sons and daughters. Eblah lived 34 years and fathered Peglah. After he had fathered Peglah, Eblah lived 430 years and fathered other sons and daughters. Peglah lived 30 years and fathered Reu. After he fathered Reu, Peglah lived 209 years and fathered other sons and daughters. Reu lived 32 years and fathered Sagar. After he fathered Sagar, Reu lived 270 years and fathered other sons and daughters. That it, Father?
26.
Oh, 26. Sagal lived 30 years and fathered Nabon. After he had fathered Nabon, Sagal lived 200 years and fathered other sons and daughters. Nabon lived 29 years and fathered Turan. After he had fathered Turan, Nabon lived 119 years and fathered other sons and daughters. Turan lived 70 years and fathered Abram, Nebron, and Haran.
Thank you. Go ahead, Linda.
Now
Way
these
too
are
many
the,
names to name, I would say.
yeah, you're the rough one there. You know,
It was like a little bit of a tongue twister, Linda.
Whoa, did very well, Bryce.
Go ahead.
I don't know how
Thank
I
you,
did that,
Bryce.
Linda. I don't even know how I did that, to tell you the truth.
Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Haran fathered Lot. Haran died in the presence of his father Terah in the land of his kindred, in Ur and Chaldeans. And Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, the daughter of Haran and the father of Milcah and Escah. I say I'm not doing very well either. Now Sarai was barren and she had no child. Terah took Abram his son and Lot the son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth from Ur of the Chaldeans to go into the land of Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. The days of Terah was 205 years, and Terah died in Haran.
Okay, thank you all very much. Just give me a second. Good. Now you will see the story starts off with what we all know as the Tower of Babel, and
Tower
what
of
we
Babel. Yeah,
and
Babylon.
and what we see coming out there is that the world was at one time with one language and one common speech, and you will see from based on the reading that these folks started to build a tower. Now, note that this was not the first time a tower like this was being built. That there were other places. There's a report. There is history that the Babylonians did a similar thing. And so here we see the Hebrew people also seeking to build a tower, and we are told that they wanted it to reach as far as the heavens so that they can make a name for themselves, and otherwise, as they claim, they will be scattered over the face of the whole earth. And that's going to be very much ironic later on, as you see. You better be careful what you say, because it could come back to haunt you. So you see here that they started building this tower, and obviously it is apparent that it is displeasing to God. Because if you look at verse 5, you will read, but the Lord came down to see the city and the tower of the people were building. And the Lord said, if as one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other. And obviously, when you read these couple of verses, it almost tells you like if God is really making fun out of this thing, that he's going to go down and put an end to it, put a stop to it. One of the things before we get to that, though, I want to just mention is that obviously the tower that they were building, you see they make mention in verse 3 of the bricks. Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly. And they use brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. And obviously it gives you the impression that this tower that they were building was one, man-made, and it was not as hard as stone, since they were making these bricks since they use brick instead of stone, and tar instead of mortar. But I mean, that is just interesting to note. Now, building the Tower of Babel would have been a great human achievement. They would have been able to build one of the wonders of the world, if you want to call it that. But the reason for building this was nothing to do with God or glorifying God. It was more or less it was for them. It was for them. It was a whole pride, a kind of a pride thing. And therefore, in essence, it was really kind of like a rebellion against God as well by building this tower. So in other words, what you see here is one of the first notions of building monuments to themselves. And also it would come across to them as a kind of like an achievement at having done this. One of the things, though, as we get into the whole notion of this, is that the tower seems to be almost like something to replace God. You get that impression where they're developing things now, and these things will become more important than God, and God recognizes this. And so by making this tower, making a name for themselves, they don't want to be scattered over the face of the whole earth. It will give them a sense of unity, a sense of coming together and building a life together. However, what we see happening is that God has different designs. God is not pleased with what they're doing. He doesn't like their plans. And again, you will see, the people want to do something or they want something, and God is not pleased. For example, you will see later down when it gets to the kings and wanting to have a king, the people want a king because everybody else got a king, and God is not a good enough king for them, and they want a human king, and God is saying, no, I don't like this idea, but that's what they want, and so he gives them what they want, and it ends up that the person that they wanted ends up to be one of the worst kings of Israel. And so you see here that these people are doing something that they want. They didn't ask God, consult God, or whatever you want to put it, to do this. And so God now is going to come and make things a little bit tricky for them, for lack of a better phraseology.
Why don't they just obey God anyway? They should obey God and never have.
We all do from time to time. We all do from time to time. So what happens here is that God, in light of all this happening, God determines, and he's always determined with us as well. He wants to remind us that we have limitations. We are not God. And so he's going to show the people that they have limitations.
Free will.
Here you see they all spoke one language, and there was a common speech. They all understood each other, and things were going well for them. However, by building this tower, now God is going to come and he is going to create among them all kinds of languages so that they cannot understand each other. And obviously, if they can't understand each other, they can't continue building. They can't do it in unison. And they will get frustrated and they will have to stop. So here we see a people who all spoke one language now becoming a people who speak different languages. And the same reason that they do not want to have, which is to be scattered to the ends of the earth, is the same thing that will happen when we read verse 9, is that we read, that is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole earth, and from there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. So the head thing they did not want to have happen to them is the head thing that happens. God scatters them abroad. And what we see coming out from this is Um, um, we have the beginning of not only diverse languages, but you're going to have now a diverse people. That is what you're going to see happening. That humanity is now divided into different nations and ethnicities and clans and all of this starts here in this story from the Tower of Babel. So you got the Spaniards and the French and the English and the Portuguese and all kinds of languages, the Chinese language and all this kind of thing happening. Um, um, and it is quite possible that it is here too that you see this whole separation of human beings into different races through this whole notion of the failure of the Tower of Babel. So, and one of the things you also see coming out of this, even if it is subtle, is that when God created all of these different languages, he didn't put one more important than the other. As I said to the group this morning, we think that everybody in the world probably should speak English, not knowing that 2 billion people in China speak whatever Chinese language it is. So you got a quarter of the world speaking one language in China. But the major point is not that. The major point is that you don't hear God saying that one language is more important than the other. There are just a whole number of languages that he confused the people with. They all speak different languages, and now they have to go into their various little pockets so that they can understand each other. So here we see, coming out of the Tower of Babel, a situation where life changes for people on the earth. There are no longer now one people, but multiplicity of people all over as we have today. Yes, Linda.
So with that philosophy, so God separates them into different regions and languages, but did it really bring them closer to God? Did it really turn them back to God, or did they still continue to be selfish?
Well, if you realize the history of the Hebrew people, and you will realize now you got to remember we are in Genesis, and
Yeah.
and you know that eventually they're going to be in Egypt for many, many years in slavery. So again, it tells you that the history of the Hebrew people is one of ups and downs. That's what it is. One of ups and downs, where they will be in slavery, they will be promised the promised land, and because of the way they will wander in it for many, many years before they can even get to it, when they should not have in the first place, and even when they do occupy the promised land, there will be times of blessing and there will be times of hardship, where you will find a whole cycle of them being that they will go into exile because of their disobedience to God. One thing about the Israelites is that the covenant between them and God, and there were a number of covenants, but the general covenant between them and God is, if you obey me, you will receive blessings. If you do not obey me, you will receive, for lack of a better word, curses. And therefore, you will see that repeated over and over again, where they will be in exile, they will lose their land. And after they beg God and they become good again, he lets them out and return to their land. And they will be good for a while until they start getting bad again. And then they will go into exile again. And they will be in exile for a long time until they start to be good again. And and they'll cry out to him, and he would have mercy on them, and he lets them out again, and they go back to their land, and the cycle keeps repeating and repeating and repeating. So to answer your question, Linda, is that sometimes they were obedient to God and sometimes they were not. And you will see that played out in the whole of the Old Testament.
Well,
Yes, Susan.
it was more than the Hebrews, though, because if they split them into all different nations and
Well, in this case, in this case, yes. But the thing about it is, and it used to happen. Well, I mean, there were still. I mean, remnants of them will go into other nations, but they still mostly stay together as a people, because when the exiles, when they go to Egypt and is in slavery, it's all of they go to Egypt when it was in Jacob's time and Joseph's time. They all went. So although they started learning different languages and went out various places, you have to remember that there was still the nucleus who stayed together.
so God still thought of them as Hebrew.
They
Okay.
were still his chosen people. He gave them the commandments, and because all of that doesn't come until Exodus. Remember, we're still in Genesis, and that doesn't come until Exodus, where Moses gives them the 10 Commandments. Well, that comes after they come out of slavery in Egypt, anyhow, that they get the 10 Commandments and so forth, which were supposed to govern them accordingly.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, so here with the Tower of Babel, God saw it as a mean. Oh yes, go ahead, George.
I had a question about verse 7.
Verse 7. Come, let us
Instead-
go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other.
What does the us mean?
The Trinity.
The Trinity.
The Trinity. The Trinity. When you see him referred to as the they and the us, he's referring to the Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. That is normally the stipulation, that we are talking about the three persons in the Godhead.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And that again, and that's a good question you asked, George, because again, that shows you too about Jesus, because sometimes, there are people who think that Jesus was not part of the beginning, but he was there in the beginning. Any other questions? Anything you want to talk about in terms of, let me just, let me see if there was any other things I needed to let's see if there was anything else. Yes, you wanted to say something, Linda? Oh, okay. I was trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to repeat. One of the things I want you to recognize too, I mean, when you look at this passage, look at there's similarities in the passage, and then I'm going to take you to, then I'm going to bring you into another part of it. But if you look at this passage, you see the words that the people say, and you see the words that God says. For example, when you read 11 verse 1, you see, now the whole world had one language and a common speech. Whereas, and you see in verse 6, when God is speaking, he says, if as one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this. So you see that you could see that there are similarities there in the words. Whereas the people say in verse 3, come, let's make bricks. God says in verse 7, come, let's go down. You get what I'm saying? There's that correlation in between the two as well. You will see, in verse 4, he talks about, the people talk about, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower. And God says, and they left off, and you will see in verse 8, where, so the Lord scattered them from from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. So you see that being stopped building. And then if you look at verse 4, again, with the people, they said the last part. Otherwise, well, let's read the whole verse. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that they may make a name for themselves." And then the other part says, "Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." And you see in verse 9, God is saying, or it is said, "From there, the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth." So you see that similarities in those. One of the other things I want to mention is when you think of this chapter, of this particular text, this particular section of chapter 11, and you're talking about the languages and the confusion and the you know the what's the word I want to say? The disunity, the scattering of the people and all of that, and the varying tongues and all of that, the confusion of the various languages. What story in the New Testament does this remind you of?
They're drunk.
Hmm?
The Pentecost, the story of Pentecost, they are drunk.
Correct. Pentecost. It reminds us of Pentecost.
We're in right now.
But at the same time, when it reminds us of Pentecost, you will see that there are differences between Babel and Pentecost. For example, you see in Babel that there's the end of one universal language, that people are speaking different languages, everybody's confused, cannot understand each other, and all of that. When it gets to Pentecost, you see a reversal. There is now, although people are speaking different languages, they're able to understand each other. You remember that story? They're ready. They're on there. So you see that whereas there's a scattering of people in the Babel, there's a unity, a uniting of people in the Pentecost story in Acts chapter 2. So you see that happening there. And you're also realizing that the universal language now is not everybody speaking the same language in terms of the language itself in its literal sense, but everybody is speaking still a universal language, because the language now is about the gospel of Christ. That's the language. Because when the Holy Spirit came, that's what the Holy Spirit came to do, so that people can go out and speak about Jesus. And so they will speak about him in their various languages, but at this point in time, the Holy Spirit is the one who is guiding this. Even if you, again, if you look at between Babel and Pentecost, you will see that there was disunity. They had to stop building the tower. They could not continue. Whereas when it comes to Pentecost, there's a unity in the body of Christ. The church is coming together as one. And that is important as well. And then another one is as God scatters the people to all parts of the earth, you will see when it comes to Pentecost, the people would spread the gospel news to all ends of the earth, and you see that happening at Pentecost. So you get where I'm saying, what I'm talking about in those connections, correct? You see yes. If there's no other questions, let's go on to the next section, which has to do now from Shem to Abram. I'll send you all some handouts that I gave out today after this class. I will send you all some handouts as well. But when you look at now, you're seeing now this is the lineage, the descendants of Shem, right down to Abraham. And obviously, we know that Shem is the promised seed, the promised line of Noah's family that will filtrate itself right down through to David and to Jesus. And what we have here is more or less just a genealogy of Shem's descendants. And if you look at it, you will see that it talks about the name of the father, then in age when the name of the more important son was born, the length of life after the birth of that son, and that you had more, and that they all had more sons and daughters. One of the things that is interesting is that if you look at it, the age starts to drop. You're seeing it coming lesser and lesser and lesser. Now, remember back in Genesis, I think it was chapter 6, God already after the flood, he cut it down to 120. He said that was going to be the elected lifespan of people, 120 years. So when you get a man like Shem, who is still living to 600, he ain't doing too badly. But by the time it gets to Abraham's father, it is at 205. When he died, and by the time when it gets to Abraham, I think if my mind serves me correctly, he died at 175. So you will see it keep decreasing and decreasing and decreasing until you get to King David, who dies at 70. That's all he lived, 70. That is interesting to note as well.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
I think we talked about this before, but the age of 500 is that exaggerated, or do they count it differently? Or because when people read the Bible and they go, "Oh, that's not right," so
Yeah.
they go, "Well, that's fake because you can't live 500."
Yeah.
You can't live like 100 years, or
yeah.
you can't even
You see, the thing is about it is, and this is my answer to that. I don't think I'm not sure that anybody really knows that. What I say to people is, yeah, you had people living to 900 plus years back then, or so they say. Whether it's true or not, or it's a fib, we are not exactly know. But what we do know is that at least they were living longer than 120 years, because God cut it down to 120 years. When after the flood. So we know that people, whether it was 900, 800, 500, people were living longer in that time for whatever reason. And but I do not know if people will ever know whether there were exactly that amount of years or not. But we know that in the Bible, God sets two allotted lifespans, 120, and then he will set another one at 70, which is the one that governs us who live today.
Like I said, people think it's made up, so they don't believe, well, you can't live 500, so they kind of ignore the rest of it, thinking, well, it's just made up. But, okay.
And people could guesstimate about it. But the whole notion is that people did live longer.
Well, I don't mean made up the age, but they made, well, the story can't be true if, they're making up the fact that they lived 500 years. So you kind of go,
Most of the time when we do these kind of things, we are talking about our time. We are looking at it in terms of our time and in our lifespan, and that's what we're looking at.
Well, like I said, people that don't believe, then they read this stuff and they go, well, that's baloney, the whole thing.
I don't think, but you see, for me, the age is not the important thing. That is not the important part of it for me. The important part of it for me is that, yes, people live longer, and then, before the flood, and then after the flood, people start living shorter lives. You
Okay.
know, and one way we could look at it is that God got tired of the wickedness of people living that long and could not deal with it any longer. He wanted nothing to do with it anymore, and therefore started shortening. I mean, let me see. I think it's Genesis chapter 6. Let me see. Hold on a second. Genesis chapter 6. When human beings began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful. And remember, the sons of God are the ones who are supposed to be of the promised seed of the good line, for lack of a better word. Saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they choose. Um, Then the Lord said, my spirit will not contend with humans forever. So you see that there, for they are mortal, and their days will be numbered 120 years.
Okay.
And and sometimes, you know, I have said this to all people, you know, this could also be God's way of trying to get people to to stop living the way they're living and to live the way he wants them to live, for lack of a better phraseology. You know, God is patient. You know, he is a patient God, and so it might have been for him too that this was the amount of time that he can put up with people living badly, for lack of a better phraseology.
Okay.
Yes, Marilyn.
Where we're talking about in time is after Noah, correct?
No, no, this is after the flood. Noah is still alive.
Okay, after the flood.
Correct.
So he is expecting these people to populate the earth.
Correct.
To go and multiply. Therefore,
Correct.
Therefore, living longer and having more sons and daughters was important.
Mm-hmm.
And at some given point in time, he gets that notion that, you know, maybe this is not the way it should happen because people are being evil. So I agree with you, but in my mind, we need to remember that they were trying to populate the earth.
That's a good point.
Well, yeah, there were. And the thing is about it is, and you're right, the thing about it is that the more you populate the earth, the more evil will be on the earth.
So then I'm going to cut your years down, then cut your fertility down.
You know.
Okay, that's a good point, Marilyn.
Yeah. So because there were you know, all the rest of the people had died in the first place. So now they needed, as Marilyn said, to increase it. But the more you increase, the more evil will happen upon the earth. The more wrong, the more bad. So so then instead of allowing so much bad to happen, let's get rid of them bit by bit by bit by bit by bit. Yeah. Okay, let's see. And then when you will see all the generations coming down, and then you will see that in the last part of that chapter, it talks about Abram's family, and it's talking about Terah, the father, his father, who we see on verse 26. You see, after Terah had lived 70 years, he became the father of Abram, and Nahor, and Haran. And again, you see 3 boys, and they're listed in what we presume is or should be the order of birth that we see there. And then from verse 27 to 32 talks about Terah, because what it does is it is the prelude into talking about Abraham. Abraham is going to be the next important person in the whole scheme of things. We had Adam, we had Noah, we had Shem to a little extent, and now we're moving into the Abraham era. And so they give you a synopsis preceding that, where you see Terah is the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran, and Haran is the father of Lot, who we know about, and who obviously then will be a nephew of Abraham. But we also see that Haran dies even before his father dies, and it doesn't tell you if he was married or not. It just tells you that he had a son, and that son is Lot. And in those, and then you see Abram and Nahor both married. One married Abram married Sarai, and and Nahor married Milcah. And then, and wait, hold 1 second. Yeah. And you see here, wait a minute, I'm looking at something. Okay. And you see here that Sarai was childless, that she could not conceive. And so, and in those days too, where you will see Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of his son Abram, and together they set out from the Ur of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan. And obviously you could see that he did not take Nahor or his wife. We're not told why. But in those days, taking Lot would have been important because he had no father. His father had died. So the whole notion would have been that Lot would have gone with whoever would have been the head of the family at the time. So you will see Terah, which was the grandfather, took Lot, and then Terah will die, and then Abram will be the one who will be responsible for Lot, for lack of a better phraseology, until Lot marries and have his own family. You get what I'm saying there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes, Marilyn.
That comes home to rest on chapter 4, verse 4 of the next chapter of 12. So Abram left as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him.
Correct. Right. So correct. So that would be what would happen in those days, and probably will still happen in some parts of the world today as well, because there would have been someone responsible for a child who has lost their parents, in this case, in Lot's case.
But why not Iscah? But why not Iscah?
Who?
Iscah. Iscah is the daughter of Haran. Line 29.
Yes, but yeah, but she would most likely would have been with her sister. That's who she would have been, with her sister.
Makes no sense. But yes, I agree with you.
Well.
Come on, in those times, a daughter was the responsibility, the property of the father. And
Yeah, but there was no
she
father.
wouldn't be the property of the brother-in-law. She would be the property of the grandfather, unless she was married, or unless Iscah is really Sarah. I don't know.
That I do not know.
It just doesn't make sense.
That I do not know.
But you know what? It was written by somebody who was
The name of
writing it
Nahor's wife was
several
Milcah.
centuries later.
She was the daughter. Yes, she was the daughter of Haran, the mother of
Yeah.
both Milcah and Iscah.
I mean, Wikipedia says it's an alternative name for Sarah.
That's what they said.
That's what Wikipedia says. Whether it's true or not, I don't know.
Yeah, but why? But the thing is, I mean, it is quite possible, but I wonder why would they change her name? Because they refer to her as Sarah in verse 29, and then they come later on in the verse and call her that name Iscah, and then call her in verse 30 Sarai again, and then in verse 31. It could be. It could be.
Yeah, rabbinical tradition, Sarai and Iscah are considered the same person. This interpretation arises because Iscah is mentioned in the genealogical context alongside Sarai's father-in-law, Abraham. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. And
No.
I mean, it is quite possible that Iscah could be Sarah. It is just that why did they change the name?
Yeah, I mean, this is okay. This is an AI overview, so who knows, right?
And they tell you at the bottom that they can be wrong at times.
Right, exactly. Rabbinical sources suggest the two names were alternative names for the same person, possibly reflecting different stages of her life, different aspects of her personality, or even an Aramaic name versus a Hebrew name. I don't know. I'm just reporting.
Oh yeah. I'm just wait a minute. I'm just going to check something here. I'm just going to check something here.
But I thought Sarai was Abram's half sister, not his niece. But maybe they just use those terms loosely.
Loosely. Wait a minute. Father, she was a daughter of Haran. So we have a situation where Nahor marries his niece. That's what we're seeing here. You see, the thing is about it is that I think with this whole name thing, and that's why there's always the uncertainty because I know there are other scholars or commentaries that will tell you it's not the same. But that's the thing that is oftentimes puzzling.
Mm-hmm.
That is oftentimes and you see, and the whole thing is that when you get further down and they talk about Sarah being, when Abraham said it was it being his sister, or they found out that it was his sister, and it is also believed that Sarai is the daughter of Terah. That they have different mothers, but the same father. So that for me is that is why you see with situations like these, I don't try to to delve into them because
Right,
you turn yourself into like a pretzel.
right,
Trying to find out because here it looks like he's married to his niece. Then you hear later on that it is his sister, and that which makes it looks like if she has one father named Haran and another one named Tara, and it's I see that just as information. Almost I will say it is information not necessary for salvation.
right.
That's being honest with you. Yes. Any questions about that though? Any questions about because we're going to start now chapter 12 next week, and then we will then get into Abraham and then into him and Lot and that sort of the relationship they had and how that relationship went its separate way eventually, and the whole notion of covenant and all of that with Abraham. But is there any questions that concerning this chapter?
No.
I did have
As I said,
I did have one comment. My commentary said that God was showing mercy by just giving them different languages and not punishing them like horrendously.
show them mercy by giving them different languages and not punish them by what?
Instead of not, destroying them or something. So I thought that was an interesting take.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean that's more merciful than being sent into exile, I guess.
Or, bury them under.
But the fact remains is it still went all over the place anyhow. So I mean,
I don't know what's mercy now, but anyway, that was interesting. Okay.
But it is interesting. It is interesting. Let me see if I have anything else I want to mention. Okay. Yeah, I am. Which also means, you see, and this is the thing, it would also mean then that Sarah and Lot will be brother and sister.
If Sarah is Iska.
If Sarah is the daughter of Haran. If she's Ishka.
Right.
She and Lot will be brother and sister.
Right.
I'm trying to delve into the days where we would have discussed these things, but I don't recall what the general consensus of this is.
The Wikipedia says that the Talmud found in Targum Pseudo-Jonathan.
Oh, the Talmud, yeah.
The Talmud and other rabbinical sources have concluded that Sarah is Iska, and Iska was a seer, deriving from the Aramaic root of Iska, which denotes seeing. It has led to the tradition that Sarah was a prophetess of great or greater than Abraham, and the implication being that Iska is a kind of alter ego for Sarah, and that when she turned to her prophetic side, she became Iska.
But I don't even think that she was mentioned. I don't know if that name was mentioned anywhere else in the Bible, though.
It's not. It's only in this line.
Yeah. That is why that's why when I'm thinking back at it, I can't remember it being mentioned anywhere in the Bible.
It's not.
So that is why for me, I don't hold a whole lot of weight behind it because it is not mentioned anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
It is not.
And the name Jessica comes from Iska.
Jessica?
Who
Yeah,
knew?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it is not mentioned anywhere else in the Bible, for what I can remember.
No, it's not, according to this. It's the
Right,
only
yeah.
reference.
It's the only reference to it. It's the only reference to it.
So 12 is next week.
Yes, yes.
Did the morning class, they only did 11?
We only did 11, yes. The morning class usually like to get into a whole lot of other discussions around some of the stuff. I mean, the topic today was around, it had something to do with the languages thing, and I don't even remember now how they all got into we get into this whole thing, and I had to continue say, all right, let's get back on topic.
Let's describe Chinese and see how that goes. No.
But they got into a lot of stuff. I mean, interesting stuff, don't get me wrong. But it is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't oh, wait a minute. Hold on a second. Let me just check something here before y'all go. A note that I just saw that I wrote. Let's see here if I make sure I have what I'm saying. You see, when you read, if you go to Genesis chapter 20, you go to Genesis chapter 20, and you read there from verse 1. Now, Abraham moved on from there into the region of the Negev and lived between Kadesh and Shur. For a while, he stayed in Gerar, and there Abraham said of his wife Sarah, she is my sister. Then Abimelech, king of Gerah, sent for Sarah and took her. But then when you get down now, you see here, hold on, wait a minute, let me see. When Abimelech found out that it is his wife, then you see Abraham explains in verse 11. He said, it reads, Abraham replied, I said to myself, there is surely no fear of God in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father, though not of my mother. And she became my wife. You see that?
So he lied.
There was a reason for that, though.
Well, he didn't lie. He didn't lie. It is just that his wife is his sister, half sister.
Isn't that like incest or something?
It is.
Well, it is, and we would classify it as that today. But the law at that time, at this time, there was nothing to govern that. The whole interfamily marriages. No, there was nothing that governed that. Now, yes, but before then, no. So yeah, so he didn't lie. It was his wife and his sister, his half sister. And then you see it goes on. And when God had me wander from my father's household, I said to her, this is how you can show your love to me. Everywhere we go, say of me, he is my brother.
Right.
Okay, my notes say on 2012 And
Mhm,
in italics, it's referencing, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father, though not of my mother.
mhm,
Abraham's half-truth was a sinful deception,
mhm,
not a legitimate explanation.
mhm, 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 mhm. And it was. It was. Because to allow that man, the king, even the king gets punished for doing it too, actually. But he led the king to believe that this is not my wife, this is my sister. Then when he finds out that it is his wife, he does straight away send her back. Um, um, but at the same time, um, God punishes Abimelech, although his intentions were good. Mm. All right, and I mean, as you know, and we will get to that, but the whole female, um, all the women in Abimelech's household family, they couldn't bear children anymore. They were infertile because of what he did. Um, they could not conceive children. Okay, all right. Let's so next week we'll go on to chapter 12. Hopefully the morning we'll do chapter 12 and 13. So I'm telling you to read chapters 12 and 13. Um, um, as we going now to the story of Abraham. And that's what we are going to look at next. And there's some interesting stuff about Abraham anyhow. So yeah. One thing about Genesis, parts can be boring, parts can be quite interesting. It is one of those kind of a book. But Abraham will have some interesting parts to it, and then when you get into Isaac and Jacob and Joseph and those folks.
Hey,
All right.
have a
Are you
good
doing
week.
better, Susan?
I am, thank you.
Good.
Yeah, I'm
I should have asked you that from the beginning. I didn't remember, but I didn't hear you coughing, so I know you're bouncing back well.
doing good. I'm enjoying this beautiful fall weather we're having. So
Oh my
it's
God, please.
great.
All right, all right, all right,
Playing
all right.
pickleball, pickleball and golf. So okay,
You playing pickleball?
I am. I did this morning.
You are playing pickleball?
Yeah. Oh, I've been playing
When are
pickleball
you
for.
when are you coming down?
Okay.
Susan, you have to know that father plays pickleball too.
I know. I know that he plays a lot more than I do. So.
I don't know about that one,
But I know you're a lot.
I
You're a lot
gotta
more.
watch you. I gotta
You're more.
watch you.
You're more competitive than I am.
Maybe
I
that
know.
might be true.
I know that.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you,
Okay.
Pam.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. God bless. Bye.